Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a beautiful Wednesday morning and welcome to the year 2020. I believe a year of clear vision, clear sight, clear visioning, and clearing out. Clearing out. So I'd like to begin by wishing each and every one of you a clear and joyful new year. And this morning we're going to be talking about the dark night and the dark night of the soul. And as we've been talking about for the past few weeks here on Exploring Sacred, discussing the fact that this, in the Northern Hemisphere, is the time of the year when the days are shorter and the nights are longer, giving us time to really think, if we choose to really ponder, to go deep within, and to sort some things out. And oftentimes we find that the beginning of a new year is when we can start to take a hard line on some things and maybe a more subtle line on other things as we begin to think about New Year's resolutions and what it is that we wish to toss away and what it is that we wish to pursue in the coming year. And in the sorting and in the really going deep is often when we can find ourselves well within the dark night of the soul. I like to call it that. That's my Catholic upbringing, the dark night of the soul and St. John of the Cross. Good morning, Sonia Davis. I hope that all of you and your, well, my goodness, I guess we're up to how many kidlets do you have now? 6? 5 or 6? Now between the heathens and the... Oh my goodness. Oh, I love them all. Love the Christmas photos that you posted on social media of everybody. Those are day brighteners, aren't they? Boy, there's one thing about getting through the dark night of the soul is that when we have our four-leggeds and our winged critters with us, it's amazing how they help us through those times when we can feel as though maybe a whole lot of our own light has dimmed to the degree that we just can't find it anymore. Our animal brethren have a really amazing way of helping us see the light and find the joy. 2 heathens and 3 pups. I don't know why I thought you had 3 heathens now, but oh goodness, she calls her kittens her heathens. Good morning, Kelly Spencer. And and it's always a wonderful, good thing to have great friends when you're walking through the dark night, isn't it? Yeah, this winter has been particularly bumpy, right? Rocky here in the Francisco household, with lots of things going on, a lot of health crises, and that can bring an entire family and circle of friends, at least into the fringes of the dark night. Because when we walk through the dark night, we don't have to do that alone. We can choose to do it alone, or maybe we think we have to do it alone, but we don't. And it isn't always easy to reach out and say, we're going through the dark night here, or I'm going through a dark night. I need help. Can you hold the light while I walk? The dark night of the soul is one of those things that prepares us, I think catapults us a lot of times into what's next. And Sonia, Kelly, if you would weigh in on that, I'd appreciate it. I know that both of you women have walked through your fair share of the dark night. And sometimes I call it dancing with the dark night because it can be a very slow dance. Sometimes it can be a quick dance. It can be a jitterbug. And other times it can be a very slow dance with the dark night of sorting through things. Sometimes we enter into the dark night of the soul when it comes to having an illness or the illness of someone that we love, or a crisis in faith, or a job loss, or just deciding that we're going to do what's best for us. Yesterday it was interesting. I met my new physician yesterday. Her name is Mudari Kakarala. She's an MD and an internist at St. Mary's and Mercy Health. And I found it interesting. I'd had the same physician for going on 3 decades, and I decided it was time to change some things up. And Dr. Kakarala, she was recommended to me by a close friend. And when I met her, I found it interesting in the interview process. It was a meet and greet yesterday to see if she would be a good fit for me in my life and the way that I live my life and who I am in my life. She's an astounding woman. I highly recommend her to people. But in the interview process, there were some questions that were asked that I had never been asked before when going to see a medical provider. And the very first one was, have you ever been in a mentally, emotionally, or physically abusive relationship with a partner, a family member, or someone else close to you? Followed up by, or are you currently in a relationship with a partner, a family member, or someone close to you who is mentally, physically, or emotionally abusive to you? And just in that moment of sitting with that, it's amazing how quickly our minds can rattle through all of the situations and the people who either were or perhaps are any of those things in your life. And in an instant, we can go through a flash of a dark night, or remembering a dark night, those times when we had to walk away from, or we were let go of, or we chose to flee from. Or maybe it brings us to the pinnacle question that we've been avoiding of, why am I still there? And I looked at Dr. Cacarola's nurse, Rhonda, and I said, well, now, isn't that a question? Or a series of questions? And she said, we've changed things up over the years and we understand. We understand how these things not only impact the physical body, but the emotional and the mental body, and how the subconscious affects our health and our well-being. And I thought, well, isn't that perfect for tomorrow's, get together around the coffee mug on my podcast. Sometimes the dark night of the soul comes in letting go, coming to terms with, right? Setting strong boundaries for self and others. Sonia is saying, still going through it, but think I have found out why I am stuck. Now just have to figure out how to untether myself. Yeah, she's saying, wow, what an interesting question from a medical doctor. Yeah. I love the fact that incorporating body, mind, emotions, and spirit into the questioning and the understanding of how it affects our health, it was superb. Absolutely superb. And, at one point she said to me, I want to hook you up to a heart monitor for the next week or so. And, you'll just wear it around and it'll report to us, what's going on. And then we started talking about the subconscious and superfluous things going on in life that affect the way that our heart feels. And that we may perceive it being of the heart, but it may very well be our subconscious tapping into the heart, touching into the heart. Wonderful conversation yesterday. Fantastic conversation. The dark night of the soul is transformative. It's transformative. I believe that not only is it transformative, sometimes we're transfigured by it. People no longer recognize us because of it. Have you ever had that where people say, I don't even recognize you anymore. I don't know who you are. I remember the first time I did a Vision Quest, my Humblecha. I came back to the Great Lakes Retreat to speak one year. I was the keynote speaker. And someone that I had known for a couple of decades walked up to me and said, where have you been? You don't even look like the same person. Your energy is different. Well, I just did a Vision Quest. I just sat with myself up on a hill, me, myself, and I, and spirit, and all of creation, taking a look back and taking a look at now and taking a look at the possibilities of what can be based on what I know and the experiences that I've had. And I don't believe that any of us walks out of the dark night without being changed. And in that change, that transfiguration, sometimes people walk away. It's uncomfortable for them to be in the presence of who we are now rather than who we were before the dark night. When it comes to untethering ourselves, sometimes we can find ourselves in a very long dark night because we are tethered, spiritually, energetically tethered. Some people call those cords. We have to cut the cords. Some people will say you need to cut the apron strings. And another way of saying that is you need to cut the cords. You need to cut the umbilical cord. The ties that bind. That's another way of saying what we're talking about. Untying, cutting the ties that bind and leaving them unbound. That can be the tricky part, isn't it? When we're walking through a personal dark night or a time of reflection. And we know that there are ties that are binding us, but we're not quite certain how or if we are courageous enough or what's going to happen after we do that. Right? Then what's going to happen? Oftentimes, cutting a tie means setting boundaries. Setting boundaries. I'm not going to take that phone call. I'm not going to take that text message. I'm going to block them on Facebook or Instagram or, social media. Those are ways of cutting ties, energetic ties, because social media is a tie, whether we believe it or not. Energetically, all of those things that bind our attention. If we're always thinking when we're on Facebook, well, who is it that's lurking and watching? That is binding your attention to that person. You need to block that person. You need to set a boundary on all forms of social media. When it comes to bonds between people who have been intimate, well, that's a little more tricky, isn't it? And sometimes it can call for what is known as cord cutting, cutting those cords. A lot of times people will advocate or teach that one of the best in the angelic realm in cord cutting is the Archangel Saint Michael, Michael. And for myself, in those times where I've had to really reach in and cut some of those cords, those ties that bind, I like to work with the presence of spirit, the great eagle. We also call him Michael, Michael. Michael, thank you for helping me to cut the tie that's binding me, the cord that's binding me, or the cord that continues to exchange energy with. Fill in the blank. Could be a job, an old lover, an old friend, an old situation. It's not always just people that we have cords running back and forth where there's still a continuation of energy that's being exchanged. An old memory. Thank you for helping me to cut that cord, to loosen that binding and rid myself of it. Thank you for that. And being mindful not to re-plug in, not to plug back into that. We talk about, going radio silent from social media or from phone. We have these amazing smartphones that we really have become tethered to. And for some people, even putting that down for a day is difficult. It's very difficult. The spirit of different things that we try to untether ourselves from. When we go into the deep, dark night of the soul, there is untethering. There's the act of untying those things that we are bound to, releasing ourselves from, emancipating ourselves, coming back out into the light of day, free from. And what are we finding ourselves needing to be free from? Well, at any time, if we're going through a really good dark night of the soul, it's a time of reflection. Oftentimes, it's not people outside of us that we need to let go of or situations outside of us. Most oftentimes, it's something within us. I like that meme that's out there about toxic people. You know, it's not a question of releasing ourselves from toxic people and why aren't they going away. The question is, what is it about us that is drawn to toxic people or toxic situations? Well, that's a good one, isn't it? I read that meme and that really had me sit down and think for a few minutes. What is it about me that's drawn to particular situations? What is it about me? I'm one of those people, my friend Darlene says, you're one of those people that just like dives right in. You don't really look before you dive into the water. Sometimes you just dive, you go for it. Well, she's a Taurus. So Taurus people tend to be very methodical. And, you know, A and then B and then C is followed by D. Right? In Scorpio, for myself, it's let's just do this. Let's go there. Let's go on an adventure. What is it about me that just loves adventure? And sometimes, you know, some of the adventures I've been on are pretty hairy. It's an adrenaline rush. What is it about that adrenaline rush within myself? Right? Why is it that some of us women have been drawn to the bad boys, right? What is it about a bad boy, as they say? What is that? Oftentimes the dark night of the soul is about really, really taking a look. Sometimes for me, what I've noticed in being a Scorpio walking through a dark night is we also like to be in control of our emotions, our surroundings, right? I like to know what's going on at all times with my body, my mind, my emotions, all times. Kelly always says, well, you know, you grew up in a military family, it's the Army, and there is part of that. I was born, and I wasn't born into, but I was raised in a very strict culture, military Catholic culture. Very much so. And that can be hard to, you know, it can be hard to let go of, wanting always to keep your emotions intact. When you were raised to believe that that's how you behaved, and if you didn't, there were consequences for not having your emotions intact at all times. Right? And as Anais Zen says, and then the day comes. And then the day comes. What visits us, I believe, in the dark night as we're perusing through our own, you know, sorting out our own closet, our own skeletons, our own hopes and dreams and fears and traumas. That's really what we're doing. We're being purified. It's kind of like a silent form of the sun dance, the dark night. It's really quiet. Sometimes it's so quiet you wonder, where is everybody? Where's God? Where are my angels? Where are my guides? Where are my ancestors? Where are they anyway? They're there, allowing for the experience to happen. They're there within you as the experience is happening, that dark night. And we forget that, don't we? We forget that our guides are within us. Our ancestors are within us. Creator is within us. Sometimes it's so dark in that dark night, we can't see an inch in front of us. We can't feel anything in or around us, and we forget. Until we remember, right? Until that crack of light flows in. Sometimes we can be cracked wide open in the dark night. And when the dark night happens and we can look back and say, oh, that was a dark night. And in that dark night, I found out what I'm made of. I found out who was there when I needed them. I found out that they didn't know I needed them because I didn't reach out to say, hey, I need you. I need to change that. Right? Most people aren't mind readers when we're going through the dark night. We need to say, something is up. I need help. Maybe it's the dark night of getting sober. Right? Boy, I always call it the come to Jesus. There's a come to Jesus. I'm going to get sober. There's a dark night. I always say to people, I guess I say a lot of things to people. It's always interesting to me that people do not forget who shows up for your wedding, and people do not forget who shows up for a funeral. By either sending a card, showing up at the visitation, showing up at the funeral, sending a little something. People don't forget that, who shows up at crisis, in the times of crisis. But the dark night of the soul is usually so solitary and sometimes so deep in the solitude that there is no public announcement. There's no obituary in the newspaper. There's no announcement in the newspaper saying so-and-so's getting married, or right. The invitation doesn't come in the mail to join someone in their dark night. Save the date. That doesn't happen. Although in the winter, a lot of people do suffer with seasonal affective depression disorder. Sad. So it can be really quiet. Sometimes, as I said, we come through that dark night and we realize, geez, I wish I would have reached out. Or, I am so glad I reached out. Sometimes we reach out on behalf of others, don't we? I'm a real proponent of that, reaching out on behalf of others. I don't post it on social media. I'm not the person who does that. For a lot of reasons. I guess that's a whole different radio show, isn't it? Why I don't do that. Okay, let me take a look here. What's going on in the chatty chat? Hey, Holly Hagen. Yep, she's talking about to help her with the cord cutting. Yeah. Kelly is saying the dark night is part of our ascension process. Yes, it is. The deeper we go, the higher we ascend. I talked about that on Monday evening at Angels and Enchantments class, the webinar, right? Higher we go, the deeper we descend, the higher we go yet. I have to dive deep sometimes into the craggy, rocky places. I remember years ago Elise saying to me, Mom, Dane is never going to move out of your house. Wherever you go, he's going to be there. Because my son Dane and I have a very close relationship. And he is a mama's boy. He is truly a mama's boy. Elise was born independent, Miss Independent. That's her ringtone on the phone, Miss Independent. Neo. She was born that way. Dane, however, was not. And I knew that. I mean, being very mindful of that fact as he was growing up, preparing him to live, outside of his mama's house. Well, it was successful because by the time he was 19, he was moved out and doing his own gig. For parents, it can be really hard to cut the cord, isn't it? It can be hard to cut the cord with people who have passed on. Let's talk about that there's a dark night. There's a dark night. There are people who mourn with the same depth and degree of mourning for someone who died 20 years ago as somebody who just lost someone, which is not healthy. And I think that for some, the wailing after 20 years is their way of hopefully not losing them. Well, we can't lose anyone who dies because, we all move on. I believe that. I know that. I don't believe it. I know that. We all move on. And sometimes when people come to see me 20, 30 years after a devastating loss and they're still mourning like the moment they discovered that their loved one passed on, then there's some cord cutting to do. Because keeping those we love earthbound is not good. Earthbound by our grief is not healthy for them or us. There are lots of forms of cord cutting. People say, Denise, why would people even come to you so that you can talk to their dead relatives? I mean, if they know that life goes on, why can't they just wait until they're dead and then talk to their relative? Yes, people actually ask me these things. And I say, sometimes it's their own emotional, spiritual, mental, physical way sometimes of allowing for the separation. Because if we love someone, we want to know that they're okay. We want to know they're good wherever they are. And if we have to keep that cord, intact in order to make sure someone we loved is okay, well, we do that, especially parents who have lost a child. And in knowing, in hearing from a loved one and knowing that they're okay, that they are very much alive, in fact, most of the time more alive than ever, unencumbered by a physical body. There's a gentle cutting of a cord, the cord of worry. There are cords of worry. In the pauses in our lives, the deep pauses, those are the times when we can look. Recently, for the past, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks actually, Todd and my grandson have been in the hospital, and both were released Friday evening, finally. It's been a long holy day season here in this household. And having cords, let's talk about that for a moment when you're going through the dark night. Having people that touch in. Kelly and Lily every night, or a phone call. Hey, how's it going? My cousins, what's going on? What's next? The funny memes, the people saying, I'm here, Barbara and Ivan Looking Horse having pipe ceremonies over on the reservation with the relatives there. Having those cords, boy, that helps through the dark night. Reaching out to say, that creates a cord. It was so funny on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, sitting here, and Cynthia Jones, who I absolutely adore, I was looking out the kitchen window, and here she is all bundled up for the weather, and she's bringing corn down to the place where we feed the animals in the forest, and hauling the corn down, and just like a stealthy, what do you call it, ninja. She and Jan Francisco placed the corn down there and left soup in the refrigerator out in the garage. And I just got a text message. They never came in. They just came in and left. And then I received a text message. Hey, are you hungry? Look in the refrigerator. And there was some of Cynthia's homemade soup. Right. And Kelly making me laugh at night. And Cousin Bobby calling in, and Cousin Corey checking in. All of the cousins. Yeah. And watching my husband go through a dark night. Bearing witness to that. And Easton is home and he's doing really well, that little bugger. He's been through 94 days of his, 3 months of life? No, not even 3 months. 94 of his 100 days of being on earth in a hospital. It's a dark night. What gets you through? And who are you when it's done? I've watched the transformation of my daughter, who traveled 94 days back and forth to the hospital to be with her son. She's not the same young woman that she was. It's pretty impressive. And nor is Dane. When you go to the NICU over and again to visit someone that you love, you're not the same. And how wonderful that David Sturkin, our beautiful cad, being there at the Children's Hospital. How wonderful. I'd get photographs, Guess who's here? Uncle Cad came to visit me in Easton today. The dark night really is a precious jewel, if we can ever come to look at it that way. Dear friend Rhonda, who's walking through the dark night of breast cancer right now, she and I were messaging back and forth yesterday. She said, I'm not quite sure what I'm going through this for, but I know that I'm not going to be the same woman. Am I, Denise? I said, you're not going to be the same woman, Rhonda. You're going to be even more astounding than you currently are, and you keep rocking those wigs because you look marvelous in those wigs, girlfriend. All right, that's how we help somebody who's walking through. And when we're walking through or crawling through or muddling through, we're not ever the same person. And that's the point of it. That's the point of it. I like what Kelly said. Dark night, part of the ascension process. Nikki's saying, so good to hear Todd is back home. Yeah. Thank you for that, Nikki. That was a dark night. It's a dark night when the head of surgery looks at you and says, we do not know what to do for your husband. We have no idea where to even begin. That's a really instantaneous dark night. Right? And sometimes when we're the person walking through the dark night with somebody, and Nikki, you understand this, as a spouse, all you can do is hold the candle. All you can do is be the candle. When we do it for our friends, all you can do is be the candle. Sometimes a funny candle, sometimes a serious candle, sometimes a crying candle, but just be the candle. Sometimes a quiet candle, right? Like Cynthia and Jan coming in. The quiet candle. The funny little text messages from Lily. Oh, goodness. Yeah. And the angry candle. My son was the angry candle. Dana and Elise already know what it's like to lose a parent. And the thought of losing another one in Todd was just a little too much for Dane. So he was an angry candle. And that's okay. Just be the candle. It was a loving anger. Just be the candle. And Elise being the nurse, right? She's the nursing candle. My cousin Danielle, they want specifics. And Cad being our medical advocate, just be the candle. Be the candle that lights a candle for somebody that you know. Every day I light a candle for each and every one of you. There's a specific candle here in my room that I light for each and every one of you. Every morning. Every single morning. May the grace of love and joy, right, be present in their lives. Every morning. Because we never know when someone's going through the dark night. We never know when we may be heading into. It's all about ascension if we allow it. If we embrace it. Right? With that, everyone, blessings be. Have a gorgeous day. Thank you for being candles in my darkened cave. And get out there and shine as only you can shine. Blessings be, everybody.